A place for information and talk.
Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
Okay, shall we move it on? Something to get excited about now. It's tax season again. Whoopee! Said absolutely nobody. Yep, none of us want to part with our money and give it to the taxman. But the taxman is coming for his pound of flesh. Yep, SARS has officially opened the 2025 tax filing season, announcing key dates and procedures to streamline the process for millions of taxpayers. The season runs from the 7th of July to the 20th of October 2025 for most individual taxpayers, with staggered dates for provisional taxpayers and trusts. In a continued effort to simplify tax compliance, SARS will once again implement its auto assessment system. So starting on the 7th of July, that was last week, selected taxpayers started receiving SMS and email notifications informing them that their tax returns have been pre-assessed using third-party data from employers, banks, retirement fund administrators, and medical aid schemes. Okay, let's to help us more and in terms of trying to get you ready for tax season, I'm joined on the line by the founder of Tax Now, who's a tax practitioner herself, Natasha Lord. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. I'm hoping that we can have a bit more of a smile around taxes.
Yeah, you're the only people who get excited around tax season.
I'm telling you, my clients too. I hope that you guys will as well. I promise you it's not all that bad.
All right, take your word for it. Okay, so here we go. What is the most important thing that we need to be aware of now that SARS has made this announcement that tax season is officially open?
Okay, so I would definitely say deadlines and also our proclivity to procrastinate. People procrastinate and procrastinate and procrastinate. And so people really struggle to file their taxes, and then they feel like SARS is not saying anything about their taxes. And this happens year in and year out. 5 years go by because SARS can look at your tax returns going back 5 years, and you can end up with a bunch of penalties that have racked up over that time. And so I think paying a lot of attention to the timelines, understanding what is applicable to you as a taxpayer, and then the third thing you can do is to start to optimize.
Now, have there been any significant changes since the last tax year in terms of processes and procedures here?
Not so much. I will say that auto assessments have had an uptick just because a lot more people are integrating to these third-party sources. But it's just a starting point. It's a baseline to say, look, we've got your employee information, your employer information. We know exactly how much you're getting paid. We've got your medical aid. We've got your retirement annuity. We've got your investments. But people may have a more colorful tax life outside of that information. And also they may be leaving things on the table because when you are submitting for a refund, the prerequisite for receiving that is that you can prove it. So in that sense, you will always need to have additional information if you're going to make the most of your chances of receiving the refund that you then deserve. Yeah.
So in terms of the auto assessments, those who have been auto assessed will be notified. So does that mean that it's safe to assume that if you don't receive a message saying that you have been auto-assessed, that means that you have to file a return?
3 things. Even if you've been auto-assessed, you need to check your auto-assessment. You must make sure that what has happened is applicable to you because you can be auto-assessed even as a freelancer. I've had some guys who receive IRP5s, but they also receive additional income, and they are technically a freelancer. It's just that whomever they're servicing will then deduct that 25%, especially in the artist industry, or they will deduct a certain amount and they will withhold it. And they'll be auto-assessed off the basis of that, but that's not a complete return. The second thing with auto assessments is that just because you receive it doesn't mean that you should just that it's perfect. So you only have about 40 working days within which to make any adjustments. If you don't do that and you don't take advantage of that, you'll find that your return is then much more difficult to tweak and to change. The other thing is that another group of people who are submitting during this tax season are freelancers and solopreneurs, guys who are gig economy workers or earning an income from overseas, or the people who have that additional income, so your provisional taxpayers, the rental income, the interest income, and all of that. And so they may find themselves being auto-assessed, like I said, and you just want to make sure that you check in. Regardless of if you've been auto-assessed or not, there needs to be a tax submission made.
All right. Now, how does so then I would assume that if you don't get a notification that you've been auto-assessed, then you assume that you haven't been.
You assume that you haven't been, and the other point is sometimes people don't have their e-filing set up correctly, right? So you may actually have been auto-assessed, but you might not receive that notification just simply because the e-filing has not been set up and connected to your contact details. So you may not get that email and you may not get that SMS, but it's another thing to check as a taxpayer is your e-filing set up correctly?
So in terms of, there are obviously people who utilize the services of various tax experts and consultants who offer their services to submit these returns. Who would you recommend makes use of an expert, some kind of a tax professional to do their assessment?
That's a really good question. People who don't know how to use e-filing, people who don't know what their tax obligations are, and people who don't know how much they should be receiving as a refund or paying as a payment. There should be no gray area around there. There should be a little bit of a baseline to say, well, in my financial life, this is pretty much how much I should be paying when it comes to taxes, and that factor shouldn't come in now at tax season. It should be something you've been a bit prepared for from the beginning of the year. If you don't have that, then you do need to speak to someone who can help you.
One of the things I've never understood is why it is that, some people obviously get money back from SARS, while others even end up owing SARS. And then you'll be told that, that's generally because you were undertaxed or, there were not enough, the tax that was supposed to be deducted wasn't deducted in full. How does that come about? How does that happen?
Many avenues. There are a plethora of reasons how that can come about. People can work two jobs, and because the combined income can push you into a different tax bracket, that could mean more tax. It could be, again, that you're a provisional tax earner, and so maybe you have interest income that hasn't been paid over during the year, which is why provisional tax is important, and you need to pay in a certain amount. It could be that you have your additional, like your fringe benefits and so forth. So some people have this as part of their job where they have a travel allowance, or some people have medical aid, others don't. Some people have retirement annuities, others don't. And that then gets considered at the end of the tax year. Once we reach that point, we can then say that, okay, you've got all of these credits for the last 12 months, you've paid in this much or this much of a refund because you have this travel allowance, or you have been a freelancer and it has been taxed at 25%, but actually you shouldn't have been taxed at all. And that all changes, but what is important is for someone to understand which factors would actually apply to them and what to do about it. Some people need to be prepared to pay. At least that's something that will help them. And some people need to optimize their refund because, again, that's something they're entitled to. So it all depends on the individual.
Yeah, just if you will, just a bit more, if you will, elaborate a little bit more on provisional tax. So who pays? Under what circumstances one should be paying provisional tax, or who's required to pay, or who does provisional tax apply to?
It's funny, I'm actually releasing a video series, very short videos on this, so people can actually tune into my page and they can rewatch this. But it's simple. You've got people who have an IRP5 with additional income, or people who do not receive an IRP5. The amount of the additional income needs to be over 30,000 Rand in a year. And if you don't receive an IRP5, if you earn over 95,750 Rand, you need to be registered for provisional tax. provisional tax is submitted twice a year. So every 6 months, this is going to happen in February and in August, around about there. For individuals, the specific dates can change year in, year out. So you do need to keep an eye out. But within those months or those time frames, close to those months, you should be submitting your provisional tax. And it basically is there to help people, like I say, who have these chunks of income that they earn in a way that's either set or it's quite varying. And when they earn in this way, no one is deducting their taxes every single month like a normal employer would. And so it helps the taxpayer estimate. So we think what will happen with you in the year, and we do the tax calculations again. If you don't know how to do that, you need to seek out help. And we do that calculation, and at the beginning of the year, and we can estimate, oh, your tax is 5,000 Rand, it's 500,000 Rand, it's 50,000 Rand, wherever you may fall, and you pay half of that in. So in February, you'd pay the 25, and then come August, you'd pay the 25, and then the tax season will run, and you'll say what actually happened. If, for instance, your tax amount was really 40,000, you'll get the refund. If you had to pay 56,000, you'll pay in the difference. And that's where, again, we start to have those questions of when do I have a refund? When do I have a payment? But that's specifically for provisional tax. That's not just for every single taxpayer for tax season.
So many years ago, when I started working as a freelancer, there used to be something called a tax directive. Do those still exist, and when are those applicable? Just explain what those tax directives are about. And
that is actually quite a technical term, but it does apply to specific people, like your commission earners, right? Another group of people that hardly get mentioned. But commission earners, if you or very specific people, what happens is that if you have some sort of set way of earning different types of income that goes up and down, or set ways of being a quote-unquote freelancer. What this does is that it's an undertaking by the person who you're working for, and they will estimate how much you're making. I'll take it in the context of a commission earner. So they'll say, well, on average, you earn about this much as a conservative guess, and so we'll preempt your tax amount. So they're basically doing the provisional tax for you. And then they will deduct that monthly as opposed to doing it every 6 months. And you'll pay that in, and then after the full year, you get assessed to say, okay, now that you've provided the financial statements, very different from bank statements, but now that you've provided the financial statements, this is the actual tax amount. And then you get your refund, or you pay in the difference. So some people may decide to do that. It's quite uncommon, unless otherwise it's more common in your commission earning industries, but less common than it should be. So your real estate agents, I hardly see them with tax directives, but they actually should be. And that's where it's common. Whereas when you're receiving it in the media industry, that's less common and should be less common, but you're a case where that happened.
Right. Okay. We're chatting to Natasha Lord. She's a tax practitioner, also the founder of Tax Now. We're talking about tax season, which is now just SARS has announced that tax season is officially open 7th July to the 20th of October 2025. Now, a lot of the times that people, if from year to year, one's circumstances don't really change in terms of I don't get a substantial pay increase or anything like that. Is it safe to assume that on a yearly basis, whatever that I need to submit or even have to expect from SARS, that also won't change that much?
Look, it really depends on people. I often try and give tax advice through real life lenses. We've got a lot of real life things that happen around your finances. People get married, they buy homes, they have to pay lobola, they need to pay black tax. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, and a lot of those things affect you. So you may have the same job and the same income, but now you're supporting your mom. Like it or not, that's going to attract a tax. If you're doing different things, it's not about necessarily how much you earn and how much you spend, but it's what is it that you're doing in your life that instigates a tax event. And then the second thing that is crucial for a person to ask is is how I'm doing what I'm doing rewarded in a tax sense? That will help you understand if you're optimizing to the objectives of the country and the tax laws, right? I can't always help people with that, but if they're in a country where they don't reward you being employed, there are not going to be many kind of tax benefits being employed. If you're in a country where they reward you for building homes because there's a housing shortage, you're going to reap the benefit of that. And so that's kind of how I would approach understanding your taxes year in, year out. With the decisions that I'm making and the way I'm living my life, am I going to be rewarded for this in a tax sense?
Yep. Right. And now there's also some changes that have been announced, I think, from SARS point of view, including their interactive channels. They say there'll be more information on SARS interactive channels and even extending customer service hours. I suppose that would be for the in-contact centers.
It is supposed to be rolled out across the board. Even WhatsApp has been mentioned. They're following suit of countries like Zambia, where people have been able to file their taxes with a USSD code or on WhatsApp. And so we're seeing that they're kind of catching on with that globalization in terms of how to administer taxes. We will see how that rolls out because we're still dealing with the auto assessments and that introduction. So let's see what happens with the expansion of the call center and the quality of that. But we're yet to see what kind of happens with that.
What responsibility does the employer actually bear in terms of ensuring that the right amount of tax is collected, that person is taxed in the right bracket and so forth?
All of the responsibility. This is one of the tax types where employers go to jail for not paying over the amounts. So there is 100% responsibility, but it is important for individuals or people who are taxpayers, individuals earning an income within South Africa, is to understand, is this an employer to you? Are they regarded as an employer to you? More often than not, yes, that is the case. But a lot of people say, oh, I've got a salary, I've got a job. And I'm like, well, yes, technically, according to labor law, you do. But according to your employer, you're just an independent contractor. And so they treat you as such. And so your tax obligation is on you. And at the end of the day, that's who SARS is going to hound. So it's in your best interest to understand, how do I submit my taxes? Again, one of those, just the 4 questions. Should I be submitting my taxes? When do I submit my taxes? Which tax types am I submitting for? And which documents do I need for these taxes? Those are very, very important questions to answer. If you can't answer any one or all of those 4, then you need to speak to someone who can help you. They seem basic and they seem really simple after you speak to someone, but I'm telling you, people don't know this. Some of them until they die, and then we have to deal with a deceased estate of people not understanding or knowing this. And the consequences of those are far-reaching, because if you don't pay taxes, someone is going to.
So just to go back to what the question I was asking about the employer there. So even if you are undertaxed, it won't be your employer doesn't bear the responsibility. It's up to me as a taxpayer. If my employer got me in the wrong bracket, then I just make the right adjustments if adjustments were needed.
Very rare that will be the case, just because there are quite a lot of checks and balances when you're putting in the amount. You'll see when an employer has to build an IRP 5, those tax amounts will be there. It's very rare to undertax the employee. Another thing is that on a practical cash flow level, that's not helpful to them. It's not helpful for you to have less tax, because then they have to pay more in a salary if you've been undertaxed, right? So if it's more common that they will overtax you and withhold more money, essentially pay over to SARS and then keep the remaining amounts. So it wouldn't be something helpful or something that they would particularly be in the practice of doing.
All right, 0861.
And yes, again, like I say, you have other jobs and other things they need to consider.
Here's a message or a comment from on X says here, I was not auto, by the way, it's from LC, Kido Queen says, I was not auto-assessed this year. I will only be able to access returns on the 21st. how long can I expect feedback from SARS after e-filing?
It's a very interestingly worded question. So when you're doing your filing, if you haven't been auto-assessed, you should get your return immediately. There's no real time frame in which you then have to be communicated with regards to that. And then your refunds are typically processed within 72 working days.
Okay. Yeah, and then I think that is undertaking that actually that SARS also make that any returns will be paid within 72 hours directly into bank accounts. Now, speaking of bank accounts, under what circumstances does SARS go direct for bank accounts? I mean, I've heard stories of people who have had like entire chunks taken out of their bank account because they owed SARS money. And I don't know whether there is any warning that comes before that sort of thing happens. Will SARS notify you that come the 28th of this month, we are taking our 100,000 straight out of your account?
Yeah, that's very common. I had a huge case on that actually, with a gentleman who owed about 84 million rand in tax, and we got the tax down to 167,000.
What?
That's a very extreme case. Yeah. That's a very extreme case, but again, that happens, and we've had other people where, they're owing 40,000, then it gets down to 5,000 or 1,000 rand or what have you. We really worked a lot with those types of cases, and here's what happens. Most people, their e-filing is not set up. They don't get the communication. SARS is sending them final demands, warnings, and they make the calculation by themselves because people don't submit the returns. So they make the calculation based off of whatever information they have. They're really not going to consider many of your expenses, or they're not trying to optimize your taxes. They're trying to get you compliant, and those are the same thing but also different. So what ends up happening is that they send this information, they call, but the number is not correctly inputted on the SARS e-filing profile. They email, but it's not the right email, and final demand, and they garnish, or they call it garnishing. So they will garnish your account, not usually for the full amount, but just enough, and they'll keep garnishing you until you actually do the submission, and they'll garnish penalties and interest based off of your non-submission. So as long as you're not submitted, not only are you getting garnished for the tax amount they've calculated, but they're also garnishing you for the for your unsubmitted returns. So that's something to pay attention to. And then you also have an issue where this has happened before. It's very hard to do something here now as a tax practitioner, I'll tell you, when they start coming for your physical assets. Now they take it to the masters, and you get a right of execution, and they come and they attach your assets. And obviously you've seen this happen in the news to some prominent people. It is very, very, very severe when it gets to that point. And you want to, by all means, avoid that. Garnishing is at least private. I think attaching the assets is quite something, and it's very disheartening because obviously you have all this, you spent all this time and energy and effort to build up your asset base, only for it to now be taken away from you. And so, yeah, that's something.
Now, when it comes to, just in conclusion now, when it comes to what we should be paying, or how tax practitioners like yourself, just explain to us how you charge. You've just mentioned how you managed to bring someone's taxes down from 4 million or odd to 167,000 or something. Now, do you charge based on, like, do you charge on a commission basis, or how do you charge for your services as tax practitioner?
It's different from tax practitioner to tax practitioner. Some people might do a per hour situation. We typically start off with a consultation, which is 500 rand. We sit down, have a conversation, and then we diagnose your situation from there and quote depending on what is needed to fix your situation. I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10 people don't have one tax return outstanding. Maximum I can say is 8 times out of 10.
Wow.
Most people have never submitted a return, and then second to that, they have unsubmitted returns in plural. And so we're usually dealing with an average of about 3 to 4 years of unsubmitted returns that we go back and fix. And so, we have to sit down and discuss that, because it depends on what goes into actually fixing those returns. With other people, like I say, it really varies on the accounting firm and their process. We're really thorough. We make sure that we categorize items line by line, so we don't do any kind of shortcuts. And we need to make sure that if you get audited, because we know what audits are like, that you're prepared, because the biggest element of doing taxes is not being compliant. It's actually the anxiety around being compliant. That's what we're dealing with most of the time, is talking to someone and helping them feel something different about their taxes. And then it's inevitable that you will do something different about your taxes, but you're just not going to do something you don't feel like doing, or you don't actually have a good relationship with. You're not going to have a good time with something you don't have a good relationship with. And so we come in and we try and help people restore a better relationship with how they deal with their taxes and in general their overall financial life, honestly.
Don't postpone. Don't leave it for another day. Get onto it right away, because it's not going away. Get onto those taxes. Sort them out. Ask. If you can't do them yourself, get somebody who can help you. Natasha Lord thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a wonderful night.
And by the way, those of you who want to seek her help, Natasha, you're available on social media. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah?
Absolutely. You can find me on pretty much all social media, on TikTok and on Instagram. We share a lot of free tips. We have a free tax calculator and an online diagnosis tool as well that you can grab on my profile. It'll just help you understand your taxes. And this is at Tax with Tash. You can search me up on Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn at Natasha Lord, and YouTube as well, Tax with Tash. We post a bunch of free content and helpful content there.
Oh, you did say you're going to be posting some videos as well.
Yes, that was filmed today.
Oh, cool.
On provisional tax.
On provisional
we filmed
tax,
it
yeah.
today. Yeah.
All right.
So that's going to be up, and we'll have a whole series during tax season, a whole email campaign as well, helping people understand their taxes week by week.
There you go. Tax with Tash. Go check her out on the social media platforms and on YouTube. Go check out those free YouTube videos. Absolutely free. Thank you, Natasha Lord. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate yours too. Cheers, guys. Bye.
There you go. Go check it out then. And there we go. We have been of service to you. Tax season underway. Go out there. Do what you have to do.